You could be anywhere today. You could be on the beach sipping water from a coconut. Or you could be out hiking your favorite trail in the mountains. You could even be sleeping peacefully somewhere in your own bed. But you're not. You're in the most important place on Earth you could possibly be. This room in the Omni Showroom. Why? Because you know, out of all the places in the world, this is where your people are gathered. This is where some of the best work on climate change happens. This is where you have access to the top leaders in the country. This is where the greatest grassroots lobbying force on Earth is gathered together, and you're here to be part of it. Today, you're representing millions of Americans who couldn't come. So thank you. Thank you for stepping up, and welcome to CCL's 2024 Summer Conference and Lobby Day.
Please welcome to the stage Sabrina Fu.
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see both familiar and new faces, and in 3 dimensions. My name is Sabrina Subin Fu, and I help Citizens Climate Lobby's Mid-Atlantic Regional Director, Thaddeus Waterman. I joined CCL 11 years ago and became an active volunteer because CCL provided a pathway that provide both engagement and logic to this incredibly complicated issue called climate change. And I stayed because I get to meet incredible volunteers like Jerome Foster II. I first met Jerome and his parents in 2017 at the, sorry, no, that was, yeah, 20, actually that was 20, yeah, 18, at the, actually it was 2019, sorry, my mind is really going. Well, at 2019, Jerome wasn't even 17 yet, so thank you to his parents for bringing him to Atlantic City. So I met him at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Conference in Atlantic City, and I knew even before I met him that he was going to be a rising star because all of the information I got from CCL leaders Debbie Chang and Max Broad. So for example, even just in high school, right, Jerome was on the DC Educational Advisory Committee. And at the tender age of 14, Jerome actually founded his own immersive technology called RUVR, and where he built virtual reality experiences on American history, climate change, and Latin American migration to the US. So in 2019, Jerome, yeah, Jerome's organization was actually featured on NBC, CBS, Fox, and ABC on his organization winning 3rd in the World Series on Entrepreneurship. During the latter part of his high school years, Jerome interned with CCL DC chapter and had climate strikes in front of the White House as part of Fridays for the Future. Jerome has worked with both Greta Thunberg and Jane Fonda, and you can see Jerome and Jane on YouTube. In 2021, Jerome made history as the youngest ever White House advisor when he was asked to join the when Jerome was asked to join the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, also known as WEJAC. Jerome continues to get accolades on an almost monthly basis. For example, just last month, Brevity magazine named Jerome as a leading Black environmentalist in 2024. Jerome credits his rise in environmental activism to the DC leadership of Debbie and Max, providing this support to really marry his passion. Because, you know, all of us have very different passions. We didn't really want to come to work on climate. Climate is just there because it's a difficult problem we need to work on. So Jerome clearly had other passions such as design and coding, which Debbie and Max encouraged him to incorporate into his climate work. So it is my pleasure to welcome Jerome Foster II, the youngest advisory council, member of the White House Advisory Council on Environmental Justice, as our keynote speaker. Thank you so much, Jerome. It is very blinding, as you can see. Yeah. And here's your bottle.
Thank you so much for introducing me, and I am so honored to be here today at the Citizens Climate Lobby convening of so many passionate individuals all across the country coming here today to show the power we have in numbers. And it's so powerful just to be able to be a volunteer who's a young person who is so excited to get involved in climate. For me, it starts not just from this idea of that we have to save the planet, but it comes much deeper than that. It comes from an understanding that we have an integral connection with the environment. Growing up, my dad and my mom were organizers for the Million Man March, and they helped to pass out flyers. And even though they weren't passionate about environmental justice, they instilled within me the ideals of what a citizen should be, is active within its democracy, active within its activism, and to be have a strong sense of moral clarity when it comes to social issues. And as I was growing up, I channeled that passion, and my parents really encouraged it, was the idea of me just going out in nature, spending many hours exploring and just losing myself to the outdoors. And that developed a really deep connection to understanding the sanctity of nature and the inherent respect we should have for it. Growing up as well, I was really passionate about astrophysics, and my parents were like, well, here's an amazing series called Cosmos by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I'm sure every black boy growing up saw an amazing scientist and saw an individual who was seen as intelligent, seen as this leader within science, and I was like, I want to be like that when I grow up. I want to be a scientist. I want to be a person who is seen not just for their intellect, but for their passion. It's seen for the fact they aren't just studying for the sake of studying, but are studying to really progress humanity forward and to see a bigger picture. From that idea, I, as a kid, was so passionate about the stars and distant galaxies and how we see black holes at the center of our galaxies and all of these things. And I was like, wait, we have such a huge respect for outer space. When we think about NASA, we think about the moon landing, we feel ourselves with a sense of pride, knowing that humanity came together and embarked on an ambitious mission to reach the moon. And you can also see that every time we think about a star, we think about Pluto, we have this sense of awe. But as I was growing up, reflecting on that same narrative, our planet Earth didn't have that same kind of reverence. It didn't have that same sense of respect. When we look outside, we don't have the same sense of responsibility to it as we do to other planets and other solar systems that we kind of just wonder at. But that's the whole mission of our work here today, and our work in our entire lives, is to inspire other people to know that our life isn't just about ourselves. It's about how we treat the environment and understanding that we have a responsibility to give back to it and not just to take as much as we can. And that is the work that I do here today, is that everyone has that responsibility. Today we're at a critical crossroads. We have seen that right now, we have just reached 30% of the world's energy is being powered by renewable energy. And that's because the momentum and the power and resistance and resilience of each and every one of us here that have been fighting for that for decades. And what we're also seeing is a unparalleled regression of our social foundations, where we're seeing racism, we're seeing environmental degradation, we're seeing sexism, we're seeing a regression of foundational freedoms and rights that generations ago, women had the right to abortion, but now those rights are being taken away. All of those things are really showing us that environmentalism isn't just about the environment itself. It's about seeing how our society must evolve with it. I see the world as a tree, and we must at some point understand that a tree sometimes it continues to grow like an oak and just goes higher and higher into the sky. And if a tree was like humanity, it would say, oh, it's gonna grow limitlessly. We're gonna grow and grow and grow until we can't reach any further. But at some point, a tree decides to mature. And it says, I'm gonna expand my leaves. I'm gonna expand my roots. I'm gonna make sure every part of this tree has equal and equitable access to the nutrients that come from the ground, from the air that's being pulled in from its leaves, to every single part of it, feeling like it's part of the whole, not leaving something behind. But humanity hasn't evolved to that state yet. It hasn't understood that growth isn't the inevitable goal. It's development, it's equity, and it's everyone having equal access to the resources that are available to us. I've been incredibly fortunate to grow up in Washington, D.C., and for my parents to really empower me to know that I have to get involved in this work. And from a young age, I found out every opportunity that was in Washington, D.C., and started by interning at the D.C. State Board of Education to work on the high school graduation requirements for the class of 2030 to make sure that climate education is a core subject in Washington, D.C. schools. But what we've seen since is that New Jersey has already made climate education a core subject. And many other school boards, other young people, other organizers and volunteers like you are pressing for it to be made nationwide. And that's because each and every one of us that were in 2016, 2018, 2019, and we said, even though I'm 14 years old, even though I'm 50 years old, even at any point in my lifetime, I'm gonna realize I can be a part of the change too. I can be a part of this movement, because I was watching, funny enough, a TikTok earlier today, and I came across this audio. It was like, everyone is living life for the first time. Whether you're old or whether you're young, we're all discovering and reestablishing ourselves. We're realizing what our role is in our life. And my mom was talking about that, and she was talking about like how even now she's realizing things she didn't know when she was 30. She didn't realize when she was 40. And she's like, wait, I want to get more involved. I want to do this. I want to do that. And as young people, there's oftentimes been this narrative of young people versus old people. But the narrative has been misconstrued. It's young people versus old fossil fuel CEOs. And what's powerful about that statement is knowing that it's intergenerational actions that really power this movement. If I wasn't empowered by my parents, if I wasn't empowered by Congressman John Lewis and Martin Luther King and many of the shoulders of giants that I stand on, I wouldn't even know about many of the issues that came before me. It was Dr. Robert Bullard in Texas Southern University that was fighting for environmental justice in the Black communities that were being disproportionately affected by exposure and burden to toxic chemicals, that if he had not done that decades of research, I wouldn't know anything about environmental racism. I wouldn't know anything about the fact that there is now 78% of African Americans live within 50 miles of a coal-fired power plant. That was because of their work. That was because of their discoveries, that we must understand that climate change isn't just about removing carbon from the atmosphere, but rebuilding and making our communities feel whole and feel seen. And it's in these moments that we realize and see each other as beyond any red or blue or purple or any type of political ideology, because at the foundation of it, we're human. At the foundation of it, we're all fighting for clean air, clean water, and a livable future. For all of us, it is that feeling. It's that knowing that we are the ones that we have been waiting for. It's like we all say it. It's the first thing I knew when Debbie and Max were picking me up from a lot of the organizing we were doing. We were going around, we're sitting around each other's living rooms, and we're learning from each other. We realized that like we are just people who are just passionate about this, and we're going to dedicate our lives and dedicate our time. And I think I was 15 or 16, I was like, hey guys, can I really intern there? I know you guys don't accept interns under 18. And it was like, wait, I want to use my graphic design skill to help you guys out. And they were so welcoming. They were so kind of just like created a sense of family where it was like, you can really partake in this, and you can use whatever passion you can bring to the table to progress this movement forward. Like, as me as a kid who wasn't really excited about speaking in front of crowds or speaking to other people, I was so nervous to step outside of like coding for 10 hours a day on my laptop and not having a lot of sunlight to being like, you gotta get out in the community and make a difference. And it was like, wait, I want to use that same kind of skill that I've learned from my childhood to really impact change. And it was from just rebuilding websites or changing the logo that I felt like that small part was making some difference. Because we're seeing young people who are like, well, I love the graphic you're making. I want to come out to this event. And like, we would train more people, and it would turn to a snowball. And we have seen in the many years, like 2019, we had 1 in every 10 young person was in the streets. 1 in every 10 young person. That's hundreds of millions of people all around the world who are taking part in this work. Now, because of the massive mobilization, we in Citizens Climate Lobby and Fridays for the Future and many of the organizations who are working for decades, 87% of the entire globe understands and realizes that climate change is not only real, but we must do something about it. That is from us. And from that work, as young people, we realized, wait, we're graduating. We're turning 18 in 2020. And after the climate strikes, after the mobilization, we realized we can transform this into political power. So in 2020, we gathered young people, nonpartisan, just getting people all around the country to get 1 million young people to register and turn out to vote. And we called it 1 million of us. And we created mass mobilizations. We went down to neighborhood level, and we said, if young people really want to change things, we have to hit politicians where they care. And politicians only care about 2 things. They care about money, and they care about votes. Young people don't have a lot of money, but we have a lot of votes. We have a lot of people power. And that is what empowered us, is that knowing that we had maybe $10 in our bank account, but we said, hey, we're going to spend 5 hours after that, after school, to go and just send out a tweet to our friends saying, hey, are you going to be my +1 vote? Are you going to be the person who's going to come and accompany me to the ballot box? And we brought that even further. We said, why don't we make it into a prom event? Prom at the polls, where in March of 2020, we created a campaign where we partnered with many different celebrities and media organizations. We said, hey, we want you and your TV shows to raise awareness of the fact that in 2020, we didn't have a prom. Like, because of COVID-19, we didn't have access to one. And we were like, why don't we make the ballot box our prom event? And from that mobilization, from that simple idea of, I want to bring my significant other with me to the ballot box, we're able to reach over 3.7 million young people to reach out, to register and turn out to vote, and to change the election forever. Because we knew our power. And we knew that we could change things by simply just turning out, showing up, and consistently showing up, not just in 2020, but in 2021, 2022, 2023, and now again in 2024, we're doing it all over again, reaching another million people, reaching another mobilization of young people, and realizing that our power isn't just in changing culture by going out in the streets and raising our voices, but going into the ballot box and transforming that into numbers where they see that environmentalists, young people who care about social issues, are someone they should care about as well. In that for so long, politicians have not cared about young people's issues. They haven't cared about student debt. They haven't cared about climate change. But now, because we turned out in the past 4 years, we're given a seat at the table. And not just given a seat at the table, we demanded it. In November of 2020, after our mobilization, we reached out to the Biden administration. We reached out to many different candidates and said, not many different individuals within the administration, and said, young people were one of the deciding factors in this election, so we should be given a seat at the table. And they said, well, we're establishing a White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, and we need young people at that decision-making table. And they said, we're going to invite some young people to it. And from that, in March of 2021, we have sent over 400 pages of recommendations to the administration. And now we're seeing 50% of them being implemented. And what's really amazing is that from this council we've been on for the past 3 years, we have been able to, with the power of the executive order that he wrote, we've been able to work directly alongside federal agencies like the Department of Energy, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Education, and to work with them and say, what are you doing to implement environmental justice? How are you taking that into account of every aspect of every program you're doing to make sure not only that it's just about reducing carbon emissions and raising awareness of the climate crisis, but making sure communities hit first and worst by the climate crisis are receiving the benefits they need. And from that, we created the principles of the Justice 40 initiative, where 40% of investment benefits go to frontline communities. And we worked alongside them and said, this is what it means to be a community ally. Community benefits plans can't just be a kind of program where you're saying, oh, because we're giving you this coal mine, we're putting this coal mine in your community, we're creating X amount of jobs. And that's a community benefit. Well, we're rebutting that and saying, no, that's not a community benefit. That's a community harm. And by you saying that's an environmental justice solution is fundamentally wrong, because you're putting them in a situation where a wealthier community wouldn't have that kind of ultimatum, where you have to choose between you have to choose between clean air and access to a job. And that's what's changing, is that we're decoupling the idea and coming back to the foundational idea of what does it mean to have access to environmental justice? What does it mean to be seen as a whole person and not be kind of riddled to the sidelines for decades of disinvestment? And what comes out of that is us looking at programs like Civilian Climate Corps, which has now become the American Climate Corps, where 20,000 young people are now being employed to work within conservation and to work directly in communities to plant trees, to do technical assistance programs, to help people understand about the climate crisis, to train them in conservation work. And that was because of directly the organizing that happened here in 2018 and 2019 from Citizen Climate Lobby working with Sunrise Movement and Zero Hour, and many other organizations. And we said, we're gonna go down to the Capitol and have a lobby day where 200 young people from all across the country, just like this, which y'all are gonna be doing on Tuesday, we had them sign the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. And from that, we realized we have so much power. And that, I think over like 20 or 30 different elected officials signed it on that day. And it was just from us partnering with y'all, connecting with each other and saying, hey, we're gonna spend a day. We're gonna spend a few hours going to each office and showing them that if we are coming up to their office and really making a difference by showing them the faces of their voters, then they know that if we're gonna do that, we're gonna be the most active voters, we're gonna be the most present voters, we're gonna be the most active constituents advocating on what they should be doing to their communities. So if they don't put climate justice first, if they don't put environmental action first, then their communities will know about it, because they're hearing about volunteers like you at Citizen Climate Lobby who are holding them to account. And that's the most powerful thing we can do, is knowing that just in this room we can change the entire functioning of Congress. And a key example of that is that in 2019, I was working alongside Greta Thunberg, and we were trying to figure out how do we get more people involved. We were trying to get it to be this larger momentum, and I was climate striking between 8 and 12 a.m. in the morning. And I was go outside the White House and make our statement heard about what bills, what action we need to be taken. And then directly after that, we were like, well, how can we get more involved? What can we do to do more to actually make sure elected officials are hearing us? And we said, why don't we start applying to internships at different congressional offices? Why don't we start getting involved and being on the inside of tables? And we did that. And I applied to intern for Congressman John Lewis. And that experience allowed me to see on the inside how we actually make change. And the biggest thing I learned is that every time we pick up the phone, an intern has to put down a list. And what that looks like is that this is something we can use and we can really make an impact. This has been, we try time and time again, it's been the most effective thing, is that when an elected official starts their week, they're gonna have a call sheet where it's like, oh, we have to tick down each issue. Where if 2 people call for reproductive justice and 3 people call about environmental justice and another person calls about XYZ issue, if 3 people are the top number in that, then that has to be the Congressman's top priority for the next week. That has to be what they realize, that people are really inspired to call and they're inspired to make their voice heard. So if 10 people picked up the phone on a Tuesday and called one of the most famous members of Congress, Congressman John Lewis, and said, hey, environmental justice is the #1 issue I care about, then on my little sheet, 10 tally marks. I report that to him the next day, and I said, well, this is what the voters are saying. This is what your constituents are telling you. So this is the priority. And from that, we started working on climate economic bills. We started looking at the Glass-Steagall Act. How do we make sure that our economic system is working within the confines of our environment and works alongside ecology? And that became just because Citizens Climate Lobby was organizing, we were doing calls and letter to editor and so many different actions, and we were realizing, wait, let's keep doing this. Let's keep impacting change because they're seeing us. They're seeing that they can't just continue to ignore us anymore because our force is too powerful, our voices are getting too loud, and we're not stopping until we see even more change. And what we've seen is that it works, and that it's gonna keep working. We have every reason to be hopeful because 5 years ago, we didn't even imagine that we'd have a president which prioritizes climate justice as one of the top 3 issues. 5 years ago, we wouldn't even imagine that we would have a climate activist on the cover of Time magazine as Person of the Year. 5 years ago, we wouldn't even imagine that there would be a massive mobilization to the scale of the 1970s for the Earth Day movement that happened in 2019 and is continuing to happen now. That is because of us. And that is because of each of us knowing that we, when we go back home after the summit, aren't gonna just stop. We aren't just gonna sit back and like, okay, we did our summit, we went to our lobby day, I'm done for the year. We're good. We know that our nieces and nephews and our cousins, our uncles, our grandmothers need to know about how they get involved, need to know how they can continue to support the work you're doing, because they see in your eyes that this isn't just another issue for you. This is your life. This is what you feel passionate about. This is what lights a fire under you, because we know we have a ticking time bomb. But every day we're working to defuse it. We're working alongside each other and seeing every angle we can attack this problem. And we're seeing it every space and every venue, from Time magazine to the White House to every agency to every classroom. Climate change is not only being mentioned, but they're inspiring us to act. We have seen over 190 young people turn out today to this conference. And I would like for all of them to stand up, to show the power of young people, to take a stand. And what's amazing about that, they are the future, and we must continue to work to make sure that they are the next grandmothers who are inspiring their grandchildren to continue to work to inspire environmental action. This is the future we're looking at here. And I was in 2018, like just one of these young people, another just face who was excited to get involved. And now from our journey, it feels like there's just so much more to learn. Like even in the past 5 years, it's like environmental action, like there's so many angles we can take it. And like every time I look at a Citizens Climate Lobby, a person who works alongside me in the White House and in this NCEQ and the WEJAC, they came from CCL, they came from volunteering, and they came from Nebraska, they came from California, and they were young people who were involved in that work. And they became people who are working in government, who are continuing the legacy and continuing the actions that are impacting change. And knowing that the young people all in here came to sacrifice their time, to take the time to learn from each other and learn from you all is so powerful. Is that like any speech I give here won't be as powerful as the conversation you have with them for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And it was meeting Debbie Chang, who was at an event I was at when I was younger, and she inspired me to do the same. There was a speaker who was here, and I was so inspired by it. And what it was, the follow-up. It was the follow through and knowing that, like, send the follow-up email to the young person. Make sure they feel seen, make sure they feel heard, so that they just aren't going back to the classroom where it's just like, well, our English essay today is about the death of the seals or the extinction of our planet. Well, it's like, no, I have a community that's active. I can email this adult who's gonna mentor me, and knowing that I can be a part of the change someday. That I can be in that room, I can be in that space where I'm impacting change and doing recommendations. And I think what's so amazing is knowing that even from climate striking for over 80 weeks in the White House, what's been the most powerful is the conversations we have. It hasn't been yelling at each other. It hasn't been this vitriol we've seen on the news. It's seeing each other as not just our family, but seeing each other as even if we're a stranger, that we're all just experiencing this for the first time. And I want to thank you. I do know we have about 11 minutes left. I want to take a few questions from the audience on anything. I know there's someone with microphones, but yeah, we'll go to a Q&A
Yes.
for a few minutes.
Awesome, thank you. We are collecting questions on cards back here at the back of the room. So first, you mentioned what an impact it made to receive calls from constituents when you were interning in Representative John Lewis's office. And we have a question about what kind of impact did it make when constituents actually came in to meet with staff or with Representative Lewis?
Yes, I'm sorry if I'm not looking at you. I can't see from the lights. But yeah, the impact that was made was really exciting because like from the meetings that we had with them, it was great that we had follow up with like Congressman Eleanor Holmes Norton. We met with her, and that what was great is that even if we didn't have an action that was there on that day, it was her knowing that she could come to us for any knowledge-based questions as well. Because it isn't just about us meeting them and having our demands, but for them to know a kind of a knowledge-based body which that she can reach out to if she's ever seeing a climate bill that she needs expertise on. I think that's what's been really powerful is opening that kind of level of partnership with Congress members so that they aren't just out on their own and kind of just like trying to figure out and collect data and collect information, but meeting with their team members and having constant communication with them and sharing them on updates and things. I think that's been really powerful over the years.
Wonderful. All right. We also have a question. You mentioned the Justice 40 initiative. Can you just explain a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Justice 40 initiative is something that was created alongside an executive order alongside the Waic committee. And basically what it is that it said there would be a whole of government approach when it comes to environmental justice reform and how we think about the work that we do. So when we look at it, say for example, a solar plant which is coming into a community, they will look at how do the benefits make sure that it's not only just further to advance a community that is already kind of has maybe access to clean energy already, but making sure that Black and brown communities have equitable access to it as well. And they measure that by the climate and economic justice screening tool that we made last year, which was made alongside a lot of incredible partners of CCL. But we take into, I think, about 14 or 15 different indicators, and from that we understand that 40% of those benefits must be have tangible impacts on those indicators, and to make sure, for example, air quality is improved, to make sure that a community has less access I'm sorry, I'm from my words. But they would have less access to toxic air. They would have clean water access programs and things like that. Those different indicators would be key things that we'd look at in the programs. And we work alongside EPA and partners to make sure that 40% isn't just the kind of number that they kind of throw at, but it has that follow-up and that follow-through through transparency that we work on.
All right. Our next question is, what's the best way for older people to support young people in their environmental and climate advocacy?
Yeah, I think for a lot of young people, it's just feeling like they're included. Like for me, I first got involved, even before like CCL, it was like my science teacher, who's, I grew up born and raised in DC, and they were having a Smithsonian event, and my science teacher was like, hey, there's this climate event that's going on. And I know like a few of you students may want to get involved. I'm just going to take a few minutes of my class time, like 5 minutes to talk about it. And what they did was like, he explained what it was, people felt like they can get involved, and he was our chaperone for the day, even on a weekend, and brought students to it. And from that, I actually learned what like climate change actually is, because like for so long as a kid, it was like these kind of dangers and like these threats, but it was like, wait, like climate change is something that is solvable through real solutions that are available to us, and that we don't just have to kind of lie down and take the climate crisis face on, but we can do something about it to really change it. And I think any adult can kind of do that, to work with a local high school, and if you're not a teacher, to basically ask the principal or administrator or a school board to say, hey, can I give a presentation about this event that's happening in the community? I would love to have maybe like junior high school students get involved. And from that, those 10 high school students go back to their classrooms, and they feel like the cool kids, because they went on a Saturday and they basically were able to hang out, get like food, and like just able to like hang out with their classmates. And that was like really amazing. And that after like I did that in 9th grade, and that our science teacher told us about that program. And all those like young people that went alongside us, we were able to talk to our classmates about the importance of being vegan, the importance of taking small actions and just embodying the ideals of what it means to kind of fight for climate change. and fight against climate change. And over, I think, 60% of the high schoolers by 12th grade were vegan and were actively involved in the work of environmental action. And that was just from one action that the school did. And given they had every year, they had like a few different presentations, and like a person from the community would speak about like environmentalism and other issues. But if like 5 people kind of do that, and like every year they kind of reach out to different high schools, and that's such a massive impact on young people. So I've seen that is a really good way to kind of reach a lot of young people at once.
All right, our next question is, what has been your biggest obstacle in your own activist journey, and how did you overcome it?
I think my biggest obstacle has been my age, because I think when I first joined the Waic, I was 18 years old, and many of them had PhDs, and it was not. I think it was a fear that like a lot of the people in these rooms wouldn't really take the issue of young people seriously. I think that's been a really critical issue that I faced a lot, is that people don't really understand that like the impacts of the action that we're taking now will impact me for like the next 70 years. All the young people in here will be around in the future that will be impacted by climate change. And that hits us very much more in a visceral way, because it feels like our lives are being stripped from us. And I think being in rooms where like oftentimes they don't understand the urgency of the issue has been the biggest obstacle, is knowing that young people aren't doing this because it's become a massive movement. We are the ones who created the movement out of our anxiety and out of our anger, and it's them understanding that they have to act with urgency. And a lot of people within the federal body just value red tape. And I think what we have to do is really, really push back and say, hey, like this, you have to kind of speed up these processes. And what we've seen is that over the past 3 years, like they have been very much willing to strip back red tape when it comes to fossil fuel projects, and the Willow Project, and Dakota Access Pipeline, and Line 3, and many other examples of when red tape conveniently was stripped away. But when we're in our meetings, urgency isn't the number one thing they're worried about. It's, oh, we have to make sure we're following all the processes. We have to make sure we're having a 6-month review of this and a 1-year review of that. And then 3 years later, we're now just seeing the start of a lot of our recommendations. And I think that's been the biggest issue, is knowing that young people don't have their whole life to wait. Just because we're young doesn't mean we should have to be telling our grandchildren still to be organizing this, because this is the last lifetime which we will accept in action. And a Gen Z for a reason. We're the last letter of the alphabet, and it's going to be the last time we accept in action. It's the last time we accept this. So it's really important that we know like young people are involved in this conversation.
All right, we have time for one more question. So if you could offer us your thoughts on this, and then any closing thoughts. This question asks, what climate initiatives or activity in the environmental space makes you most optimistic for the future?
That's a really good question. I think there's so many different programs that I've seen really optimistic about the future. I would say, for myself, I think a lot of what I've seen is really been powerful is the tree equity movement. There's like American Foresters, a really good nonprofit which is doing forestry work, has been working alongside communities to make sure that we have reforestry in Black and brown communities that have been historically impacted by redlining. And what's been really amazing in that is that knowing that has so many co-benefits, and seeing that like if you go to a community like Tucson, Arizona, and like you see like the disparities between Black communities and wealthier, whiter communities, it is that disparity, and see like, wait, there's actual records and data that see maternal health mortality being impacted. We see childhood asthma being impacted. We see so many different kind of impacts that you wouldn't expect to see from tree canopy impacting, but it does. And I think that's been really amazing that we have now, I think, $3 billion of funding that was just allocated to that through the Inflation Reduction Act and our partisan infrastructure bill. And that is really powerful, is getting more people involved in that work, more people volunteering to plant trees, and not just any type of tree, because like it has to be native tree, it has to kind of inspire more action. But I think what's powerful about tree planting is that it doesn't stop there. A lot of the tree planting actions which happen really spur more community action. Like, if you're a kid in Seattle, Washington, like, and you're planting a tree, then you now know about environmentalists who are doing that work. And they're not just gonna stop at planting a tree, because that's the first step. And then now you continue working with them and continue organizing, and then it becomes a lifetime of those connections. I think that's what I've seen is really one of the kind of inspiring things I've seen is that I see the kind of long-term impact of that. And if there aren't any more questions, I want to thank you all so much. And I want to end in a chant, if you all can join me in it, in true activist fashion. And I'll start with, what do we want? Climate justice. And when do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. If we don't get it. Oh, okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you.
For next year, what do we want? Please welcome to the stage Topher Anderson.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Topher Anderson, and I have the privilege and joy of being the interim development director for Citizens Climate Lobby. It's interim because our fearless leader's on maternity leave, and that's the best thing ever. So, but yeah, I am here with my colleague, Rebecca Utek. Rebecca, could you stand up real quick? And I've had the privilege of fundraising for CCL for 5 years. But before that, I was even a group leader and then a Senate liaison for years before that. So it's been a while. In this role, though, I often get asked this question of what does it actually mean to do fundraising for CCL? Like when you look around this room, it's really obvious that our greatest resource and strength is our National Volunteer Army. Like our secret sauce is your genius and your investment of time and energy and creativity. So what the heck am I doing here, right? Well, I wanted to answer that question together, if you'll humor me, with a little visioning exercise. So would you all be up for that? Whew, thank goodness. Okay, so for this exercise, I invite you to close your eyes. It is an invitation, so you don't have to. But I invite you to. Okay, now take a deep breath. Center yourself in this moment. It's 2024, and you're surrounded by more than 1,000 climate advocates from around the US. You've had a jam-packed few days of training, speakers, and education that might have your head spinning, and that's good. But set those spinning thoughts aside for a moment. Breathe in, and just feel the chair beneath you and your feet on the floor. Breathe out, and let go of your plans for that lobby prep meeting you still have to do, or whatever's coming up later in today. Just be present here, right now. Okay, now as you breathe in next, answer this question. Who brings you here? In addition to your own future, whose future are you here to protect? Whose 2100 and 2050 are you here to protect? As you breathe out, envision them. It could be the face of your children, your grandchildren, your nieces or nephews, your community. But whoever or wherever they are, look at them in your mind's eye. As you continue to breathe deeply, imagine that they're sitting with you right now. In my mind's eye, it's my 2-year-old son, Marshall. He's sitting in my lap, and I have 5 young nieces and nephews circled around me. And so for a few moments, just tell your loved one what kind of future you want for them for this climate, and tell them what you're doing about it today. Okay. Take a deep breath in and a long breath out. A deep breath in, and on your breath out, we'll travel into the future together. Okay, now, the year is 2100. You're no longer in this room, and neither am I. But the person or people who you were just talking to are filing in. I invite you to look around the room through their eyes and to hear it with their ears. The first thing you notice is the sheer number and diversity of the audience. There are at least 4,000 people in this room, cramming it from end to end. There are farmers and foresters, urban planners, and blue-collar workers. You can hear multiple languages spoken in different pockets. People of every race, religion, and political affiliation are all here. And they're all boisterously and proudly themselves as they meet new people around the country and have great conversations. Now, over that chatter, I invite you to look up in your mind's eye. Look around the room. You notice a huge series of banners hanging from the ceiling. It's too many to quickly count, but it's at least 50 or 60. Every one of these banners represents a law that CCL has helped to pass in a significant way. Each one includes the bill title and the story of how we contributed, and the photos of our volunteers at bill signings with their members of Congress. But the best part is at the bottom, where every volunteer who feels like they impacted that bill has signed it and wrote what they did. And your name is on quite a few of these. Now on the stage, the main event is about to begin. The President of the United States and the Senate chairman are from opposing political parties. But today they come up on stage to thank CCL and honor the vital role that CCL played in securing a livable world for the 22nd century. They speak about how the perilous 20s and 30s, which are now recorded in history books, were the peak of climate instability and political polarization. And they speak to how CCL turned the tide by showing up day after day with their professionalism, their energy, their love, and their persistence. There's still work to do in 2100, but it's drastically different. It's maybe not about averting climate change because we've hit and surpassed net zero, but it's about adapting to the damages and ensuring good outcomes for everybody and drawing emissions down even further. So the policy issues are different. The technology is alien to us, but listen. Hear the way that CCL continues fighting for a livable world. The DNA of CCL is still in this room. Our founder, Marshall Saunders, still breathes here. His contagious optimism, his persistence, his vision, his love, it's still here. And yours is too. That's why your loved one came. As they take it all in, they look around with the banners with your name on it. They see the vibrant chapters that you started in the movement that you built. As the audience stand to applaud the speakers, your loved one remains sitting for just a moment. They close their eyes and they see you in their mind. And quietly they say, "Thank you. Thank you." Okay, we're gonna take one last breath in and out, and then we're gonna come back to the present, all right? So in and out. Okay, everyone please open your eyes. My friends, thanks for doing that with me. That's what development and fundraising means for Citizens Climate Lobby. It's looking into the future, not as if we're like grasping for a crystal ball so we can glimpse a better future, but it's looking for the hammers and nails so that we can build that future together. And already, everyone in here has built the foundation and the framing for that future. There are already 1,000 of us in this room. And tomorrow we're gonna have hundreds of meetings with our members of Congress. As an organization, we're 87% funded by our grassroots. And already with that, we've helped to pass 6 bipartisan federal laws, 5 state laws. We've already shown up in our communities, stepped out, and become the citizens that this country needs. But the reality, and the hard reality, is that finishing this future is going to require more of us, as people and as an organization. To pack this room with people of every background and political stripe, it's going to require a more robust scholarship program so that not a single climate-concerned citizen faces barriers to lobbying their elected officials. Those banners scattered around the room will require a bigger government affairs team to help us direct more sophisticated campaigns. It will require a deeper well of training and workshops that enable everyone to become an expert on the climate policies of the day. Making this decade the peak of climate instability and political depolarization will require more CCLers. It will require more of us in our communities and more resources for our chapters who are doing incredible work. So, I will make an ask that as some of the people already building this future with us, that you consider investing even more by making a financial contribution today. I know this is a bold ask, especially when you're doing so much, but I make this bold ask because my time in 2100 tells me it's worth being bold. For me, it's worth it to see a livable world for my son and the grandkids he's going to bring to that conference. And I hope it's worth it for you too. If you so choose, you can say yes to my request and my ask in one of 3 ways. First, if you've never made a donation to Citizens Climate Lobby, I ask that you please consider making a meaningful gift, whatever that means for you. And if you can make it monthly, that's really powerful in helping us sustain our work month after month. Second, if you already give to CCL, thank you. I ask if you consider possibly stretching your gift or texting someone in your network to say, hey, have you ever considered donating to CCL? And third, if you have the capacity, I ask that you consider becoming a climate guardian by pledging a leadership donation of $10,000 or more. This is a leadership level of giving to propel our work forward, and there are dozens of climate guardians in the room today. It's a bold step, but I hope that we'll find at least 8 climate guardians in this conference who find that it's possible for them. So please consider this if you're able. So right now we're going to take a few minutes, and I'm going to give you that chance to respond right here and now. So I'll share some brief directions, and then Ricky's going to play some music. So during that time, please stay seated. So to make a monthly or one-time donation, you can scan the QR code on the left up here, or if you pull out your conference brochure, it would be on the top QR code for your conference brochure. To scan a QR code, you can open your camera app and you hover it over the QR code and hit the link. And if you have any issues with QR codes, please raise your hand. CCLers are incredibly friendly and they'll help you out. If you're considering a Climate Guardian gift, I just ask that you take this moment to get the ball rolling. Write out any questions you have. Think about what's possible for you. Text your significant other to make sure you have their blessing. Then, after the music ends, please come and talk to us over the break. Myself, Rebecca, and Mark will be standing up here near the front of the stage to talk with you. If you're not able to make it because you have to run to that lobby prep meeting, you can also scan the QR code on the right or the bottom one on your brochure to send us an email, and we'll make sure we connect before the end of the conference. So with that, Ricky, can you give us a few minutes to take some action? I'm hoping for some great music that'll give us some boogies. Okay. That is my time with you today. Thank you so much. We're going to take a break and then come back here at 10:10 for an awesome film screening. And so remember, again, please be looking for Mark, Rebecca, or I if you'd like to come talk to us at the front of the stage. Thank you so much.